America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz, CEO of Job Creators Network.
And you can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Alfredo, today we're joined by our good friend Chip Rogers, and Chip is the president and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Chip joined AHLA in January of 2019. AHLA is America's only national association dedicated to serving the interests of the entire hotel and lodging industry. Under his leadership, AHLA was named as 100 associations that will save the world by ASAE and was honored with the White House Presidential Award for its pledge to America's workers and was recognized with the PR Week Purpose Awards in 2020. So exciting stuff. The hotel industry certainly has far-reaching impacts on our economy. I just happen to have some data here, but they support 8.3 million American jobs, which is equivalent to about 1 in 25 U.S. jobs. That's a pretty big impact. Do you think about the little hotel owners all the way up to the Marriotts and the Hiltons? I mean, that's a substantial impact on our economy. I don't think people really realize that.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And Chip's done a great job. You know, he carried them through the pandemic, and I think he did a fabulous job. Chip and I have been friends for years, and I really salute him for an incredible job that he did carrying that industry through a really, really dark period for that industry.
You are coming to us from Iowa. Where in Iowa are you?
I'm in Cedar Rapids.
What is on the agenda for you today?
Well, I'm out here with Senator Ernst and team at a field hearing on something that we helped introduce, which is called the Prove It Act. We helped, the team kind of think about the idea. We kind of brought it to their attention, and they've done a really tremendous job of putting together a piece of legislation that I really think will be game-changing for small business owners. Because, the one-size-fits-all legislation that's pretty much been the norm out of D.C. has really done nothing but really kill small businesses every time, legislation or regulations are introduced. Dodd-Frank is the best example that I always keep mentioning. That obviously was introduced, as part of the financial crisis. And what ended up happening there is the big banks got bigger and 2,000 community and regional banks went away. And as you know, that is the lifeblood for our small businesses, is the lending that's coming from the community banks and regional banks. And so without them, there really is no small business. I mean, and so, we have to make sure that legislation is out there. And this was what the Prove It Act really tries to address, that shows really the impact that it has to small businesses, and make sure that the impact is mitigated by excluding them, if possible, from such legislation. So that they're not really crushed by all the onerous, compliance costs.
We're going to hear from small business owners at the hearing today, right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's great. I mean, it doesn't get any more credible than having that small business owner sit there and talk about how a regulation or a new law or a tax that's been passed impacts their ability to not only survive, but thrive and create jobs. And I think it's just such a huge impact on the issue, and really helps people understand what small businesses are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
And I really like, I'm pretty sure it was really kind of the Republicans that started this, but, maybe the Democrats have been doing some of it as well. But I like this idea of field hearings, really coming out and actually talking to the people where the people are. Remember that was our big complaint when we were doing our Bring Small Business Back bus tour. When I would go up to DC and I would tell them, guys, I said, you have to actually get out there. They say, well, we have, we notify, we put these comments out, we tell people that we're having these hearings, but nobody comes or nobody says anything. Well, that's because they don't have time to do it. Small business owners are busy actually, running their businesses. They don't have the time, they don't have the money to actually, take 2 days out to sit in front of senators and bureaucrats explaining their issues. And so I love the fact that they're actually going out and doing these field hearings on many different things. And I just wish we could do more and more of those because I think they're really effective.
Yeah, I mean, I always joke that small business owners are the chief cook and bottle washer, and so yeah, I mean, taking a day or two on their own dime, flying to Washington because they don't get reimbursed for their travel expenses. They go there on their own dime.
Right.
And hotels can be expensive in the city, especially during the week. I mean, you know how DC works. And I think it is impactful for members of Congress to get into their own states and be there and come to them and hear what they have to say. I just think it has a much bigger impact. So you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Hey folks, Elaine Parker here from Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. A tree branch hit a power line in Ohio 2003, and it shut down 21 power plants. Around 100 people died. We have a power grid that was designed in the 1800s. Even the White House sees it. They're saying 2/3 of the grid are at least 25 years old, so they recently announced billions of dollars to update it. And how long will that take to actually do? That's why having your own solar power is more important than ever. With the Patriot Power Generator, you get a solar generator that doesn't install into your house because it's portable. You can take it with you and even use it inside. But it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, or even your fridge. And right now you can go to 4patriots.com and use code STREET to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including the Patriot Power Generator. You'll also get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. And a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com and use code STREET to get 10% off. That's 4patriots.com. Use code STREET to get yours today. All right. Well, now it is time for our interview with Chip Rogers, the president and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Chip has led the AHLA team and the lodging industry to achieve tangible results for the AHLA members. He's received numerous awards and has been recognized as one of the 25 most influential by Business Travel News, among many other distinctions. Chip, welcome to Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone.
I am so happy to be with you. Two of my favorite people, Elaine and Alfredo. And it just occurred to me that when Alfredo and I are on the same show, you could almost refer to us as AOC, Alfredo Ortiz and Chip.
That's pretty good, Chip. That's pretty good. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for making the time. We've been friends for a while, and I have to tell you, I salute you because you took the industry through a pretty ugly time with COVID. You basically came on right before COVID hit, and so you had kind of a baptism by fire, basically. But you did a tremendous job. I really salute you. I watched everything you're doing throughout the whole process, and I truly think the industry owes you a great deal of gratitude and thanks for what you did.
Well, I appreciate that. I always like to put my life experiences in the football terms because I think that's something most people can enjoy. So my first year ever was the greatest year ever in the hotel industry, 2019. and my second year was the worst year ever, 2020. And so if you put that in football terms, that would be like the 1972 Miami Dolphins who went undefeated and the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers who went winless. So that is, those are my 2 years back to back.
Yeah, it was tough. I know you and I had a lot of conversations during COVID, and it was pretty ugly. But again, you did a tremendous job. I salute you, and so impressive what you did there and what you're continually doing at AHLA. So, enough with that. We'll get started. We'll jump right into it. Elaine, I know you wanted to kick us off.
Let me just say one thing real quick.
Oh yes, go ahead, Chip. Sorry.
And it's a tribute to you guys because you focus so much on policy, and in a world of politics where everybody is concerned about, number one, attacking each other on a very personal basis, and everybody personalizes everything, good and bad. It's really nice to talk about policy. And going back to the pandemic, one of the things that we talked about when we were trying to save our industry, the hotel industry, was so much of what we're trying to prevent has not necessarily been caused by the pandemic, but been caused by the reaction to the pandemic by bad policy. And so when we looked back, if you look back even to 2020 early stages, Miami and Florida and those places that were implementing good policy, they recovered almost immediately. Those hotels weren't in great need of assistance because bad policy didn't hurt them. Meanwhile, places like Chicago, New York, even to this day, San Francisco and Seattle and Portland, with really bad policy, those are the hotels that ended up needing assistance, again, not from the pandemic, but assistance because of the damage that was done by bad policy. So I salute you in making sure that we as Americans set aside our personal like and dislike of specific politicians and really focus on the things that are going to impact our lives, which is good public policy.
Well, thank you for that. And, I do say I love my job because we focus on small business, right? We focus on small business ownership. As you know, there are 33 million small business owners out there, employ 60 plus million people. That's a pretty large swath of our population, right? That really is dependent on success or failure of small business. And I like saying, look, I mean, we're not fighting for just Republican small businesses or Democrat small businesses, right? I mean, we're fighting for all small businesses. And that's the beauty of the job that we do, is that we're just fighting for what we believe is the backbone of our communities and the backbone of our country. And so, I know a lot of your business owners are small business owners as well. They're individual franchisees. And I know that, they need the help because it was really tough during COVID. And quite frankly, regulations, as you very well know, and I know we're going to talk about Los Angeles, for example, and what's going on there. Regulations that are just ridiculous can really kill an industry and really kill a small business owner. And so, we got some fights ahead of us, that's for sure, against bad policy, Chip. And I'm glad to have a friend like you that fights those fights along with us.
Glad to be here with you. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, people think about our industry and they think about those names they see at the top of the hotel, whether it's Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Holiday Inn, any of those, Wyndham, Choice. But the reality is that 2/3 of hotels in America are owned by small business owners as classified by the Small Business Administration. And so, yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
These are people in your community. These are franchisees who live and work in your community, hire people in your community, and they just don't want the crushing weight of government on their shoulders every single day, and increasingly the crushing weight of labor unions who are using government to do their dirty work for them. And I know we'll get into that later.
Yeah. And Chip, you actually have the fortune and benefit of actually having been at another hotel association prior, Asian American Hotel Owners Association, which you also led tremendously well. But you got to view the impact, the positive impact of this industry to the minority community and to the immigrant community, and really the American dream really coming alive because of it. And so I think you probably know really truly firsthand the benefits and then the risk that bad policy have on the American dream and those immigrants that try to pursue it.
Wow, you couldn't have said it any better, Alfredo. You're exactly right. If you look at hotel ownership in America, it is dominated at the individual owner level by the Asian American community. Now think about that. These are many people who come to the United States, and what are they coming here for? They didn't come here to say, wow, I want to go to a place that has more government regulation. Like, no one says that. They're like, I want to go to a place where I am free to build my life and my dream. And what have they done? Well, they come here with little connections, many of them not speaking the language, very little money oftentimes, and yet they rely on family and friends to build these hotels, to run these hotels, to build these businesses. And they've done so in a way that they now dominate one of the major staples of the American economy. And they didn't do any of that because of government regulation. They did all of that because they were free to take their hard work, their ingenuity, and just their drive and grit to accomplish something and take risk. That is so important because we see this every single day with bad policy. I mean, I know you guys have fought this idea of not bailing out student loans. That's another form of risk. When you say, as an individual, I am willing to take out a loan because I believe in myself and I believe this education can help me in my life and in my career, and I'm willing to put myself in debt to do that. That is a risk that should be rewarded. If you take that, if you get that money and you say, well, I only have to pay it back, that's not a risk. That's not a reward. There's no reward there. And that destroys the system. And so across the board, we should be rewarding risk, and we should be rewarding those people who want to come to the United States and build a better life. And the Indian American community in my industry is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. I remember years ago when we were challenging some of the really ludicrous regulations that are coming out of the National Labor Relations Board. AHLA was a big part of it, and I remember talking to these business owners and really the stories of just how they actually, what they do to run these businesses, their entire family operation, basically living in their hotels 24/7. It's just really amazing. I mean, it's heartwarming to actually hear that hard work really has reward, and so that is something that really frustrates me as well, and I know frustrates Elaine, is that sometimes when that upside reward is really tried to capped off through these regulations and taxation, I always tell people, I'm like, if I'm taking all of the risk by putting my capital and my family and my hard work and my time on the line for this idea that I have, shouldn't I be allowed to have unlimited upside? Why should I be capped on that upside if I'm taking all of that risk?
Exactly. If I'm willing to risk everything, why are you limiting how far I can go? And that unfortunately is America today. We see it across the board with all sorts of terrible policies. I mean, I'll get into some of the stuff that's happening in California, but generally across the board, and I know you and I have talked about it, these extreme wage proposals, all that means, and this is where people with terrible policy ideas just don't get it. First of all, they don't really use math. But if you're a business owner, you know how much of the income that you have to your business, the revenue that you can dedicate to pay people. Like, you can't magically expand that just because government creates a new rule. So when you create a wage at the bottom that is ridiculous, and we now have wages in California that are beginning to be mandated at $30 per hour. When you do that, all that means is that the people that are your top performers, the people that are working the hardest, the people that go that extra mile, the people that you want to reward for doing a great job, it means they don't get it. It means you can't give that person the raise that they deserve. Why? Because you're artificially paying someone at a rate at the bottom who probably doesn't deserve that. A 17-year-old kid who's looking for their first job doesn't need $30 an hour, especially at the expense of the 25-year-old single mother of two who deserves the raise. And you know who understands best how to make sure that both of those people are properly compensated? It's the person they're working with. It's the business owner. It's not some local politician who got elected because he told the local union everything they wanted to hear. A politician who probably is very uneducated, has never worked in a private sector business. Those people have no idea how to run a business. But that business owner who puts it all on the line and wants to reward that single mother of two because she's doing a great job, but can't do so because of terrible public policy, that is the destruction that's happening when people make bad political decisions.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And Chip, I jokingly have been telling people that how you have take your daughter or son to work day, that we should actually have a take your legislator to work day. and help them understand actually how business really actually runs.
Amen. Amen.
So
I think we got to get Elaine involved here.
yeah. Sorry, Elaine. Chip and I could talk all day long, grab a beer,
Chip, I want to talk about sort of the overall leisure industry. And you talked about Florida and its sort of rapid recovery as opposed to other states. I'm in Orlando, but I can remember in May of 2020 when DeSantis was opening things up. I took my daughter over to Clearwater Beach just to, get out of the riffraff. And we were at a Hilton right on the beach, and they had, the good policies in place to keep people safe. But I remember talking to people in the elevator and on the beach and finding out where they were from. Every single person was from a state up north: Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey. I mean, you name it. They were like, we came here to get away. We came here for freedom, just for the weekend. And I mean, they were just dying to get away. And so, Florida was obviously a huge magnet during that time. But I think for me, things get skewed on how busy how busy things are in the travel industry, because we're packed here. We're packed in the hotels, we're packed in the restaurants, with tourists here in Orlando. How is the travel industry overall recovering from the pandemic?
It's good, but it's different. And give me just a couple of moments to explain. First of all, you had a uneven recovery. Places like Florida, Texas, Arizona, the Carolinas recovered a lot faster than places, as you mentioned a moment ago, the Northeast, especially the Northwest, Washington, D.C., Chicago. Now that has changed. Things are getting better in all of those places outside of maybe San Francisco and maybe Portland. But it was a spotty recovery. It was also much different clientele than pre-pandemic. So the business traveler, the large conventions weren't necessarily, though, except Orlando. I'll get to that in just a second. And so we saw a lot more families vacationing. And so when you go into those hotels, the room occupancy rate actually today is just about exactly where it was in 2019, within a percentage point or two. But it used to be that might be one business traveler in that room, and now you're seeing a family of four in that room. So it might feel a little bit more packed. It's also different because that business traveler might want room service. They might go down to the hotel bar just to grab something quickly to eat, while the family is probably going to go out to dinner in the local community. It's much, much different. So all of that has changed. Now, business travel is coming back. Leisure travel is tapering off a little bit, and the big conventions are coming back. But a place like Orlando really benefited. I remember talking to the gentleman who runs the Orlando Convention Center, and he was telling me that the second half of 2021 was bigger for Orlando than the second half of 2019, already bigger in 2021. And the reason for that is because so many of those conventions, those large conventions that previously had gone to San Francisco, Seattle, LA, and couldn't go there, well, they had to find a home. Because as you know, many of these associations and organizations, that's a major revenue stream for them. They can't just cancel these conventions. And so they were going to Dallas, they were going to Orlando, they were going to places that allow people to gather, and it paid off in an enormous way. And so the big conventions are back. The small business travel is coming back. It's not exactly where it was, but it's coming back. The inner city business travel is not back yet because people aren't 100% back in their offices. And then the leisure travel is tapering off at a very healthy level.
Now you mentioned a little bit Los Angeles. I'm hearing some crazy things coming out of Los Angeles, Chip. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Well, the problem with California is they govern by mob. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. What I mean is that they put virtually everything on a ballot. And when you do that, it doesn't allow people to really think about issues. They're relying on bumper stickers and videos and television commercials and radio ads and mail. That's how they are reacting to these things. And that's not a way to govern. I mean, our founders never dreamed of it that way. That's why they created a representative democracy. Now, are there certain questions that should go on the ballot? Of course, but those should be limited. Those should be easily understood. What we're dealing with in California is that every time the union wants something that they can't get through negotiation, they just go out and get enough signatures to put it on the local ballot. And since they've done a really good job, I've got to hand them credit, to electing essentially members of the union to local city councils, they run the show. And so they get pretty much everything that they want. One of the things that we're dealing with right now in Los Angeles, and I could go through an entire list of terrible things that are happening in California. But the worst idea, without question, is this idea they came up with to put homeless people alongside of paying guests inside of hotels. Now, I'll tell you how crazy this is. So the proposal that Los Angeles voters will vote on in March of next year would, if passed, it requires every hotel at 2 p.m. every day to call City Hall. You can imagine how that's going to go. They have to report how many rooms they have, and they have to report what rate they're charging that day. City Hall will then take vouchers and go out and give them to homeless people that are, I guess, are living under bridges or wherever they're homeless. Give them those vouchers, and then the homeless person will check into the hotel just like a regular guest. So not only will they be in the hotel room, they'll be in the hotel bar, in the pool, and everything else. Now, as we know, homelessness is a very serious problem that needs to be dealt with in a very serious manner. This recipe, this idea that the union is putting forth, that voters will vote on, it doesn't help the homeless person because now they're not getting the care that they deserve. It puts the guest in danger, and most importantly, it puts the hotel workers in danger who are around this population that they're not trained to take care of 24/7. This will be an unmitigated disaster, and yet this is the type of policy that our friends in organized labor believe is good for America.
Now, do you really think that something like that ludicrous has a chance of passing, Chip?
It does, and here's why. Because if you look at the way the question is written, it's actually on the ballot. There's a number of other items that are in there. It talks about solving the homelessness problem. It talks about solving the affordability of housing problem. Because one of the other things that's in this proposal, in addition to housing homeless alongside of paying guests, it requires everyone who wants to build a hotel, for every hotel room they build, they also have to build another room somewhere else for affordable housing. So no one's going to build any more hotel rooms in Los Angeles. It's only going to help consumers. So it's a totally destructive policy. There's also something else in there now think about this, Alfredo. You build a hotel, and a hotel in Los Angeles at a minimum is going to cost you, I'm talking Econo Lodge status is going to cost you $30 million to build. It only goes up from there. Right now, when you build a hotel, you get a certificate of occupancy, and outside of some sort of major health violation, you continue to operate that hotel. You just keep operating it. That's the way it should be.
Right.
In this legislation, they're requiring you every single year to get your license renewed. What do you think the requirement for getting renewal is going to be? It's going to be that you're a unionized hotel. And so now you've invested $30 million or upwards. You don't even know if you get to operate the next year. No one's going to enter an environment like that. No one.
Wow. I mean, that's really going to decimate the industry. Now, for folks out there that are listening, they're like, well, thank goodness that's just Los Angeles. They're crazy over there. Talk to us about how this kind of stuff spreads across the country and why we should be worried as a country about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, bad policy knows no limits. And we see it in every corner of the country. So when you think about the situation, I'll focus on homelessness, but I'll also bring up healthcare. When you think about homelessness, that is, again, a very serious problem that needs to be dealt with seriously. But it's something that almost every community, red states and blue states, are dealing with. I think about my original home state of Georgia. There's homelessness in Atlanta. Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, there's homelessness everywhere. City of New York, there's tons of homelessness. Doesn't matter where you go, it is a problem. And if Los Angeles comes out and says, hey, here's the solution, put them in hotel rooms, and then they go tell everybody, a lot of politicians aren't going to do their due diligence. They're going to say, oh, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that here. And then your local community is going to be destroyed as well. So bad policy is like a cancer, and it spreads rather quickly. We had a policy a few years ago that we fought, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court on, and we ended up losing when they didn't take up the case. But it dealt with the city of Seattle telling hotels only, again, hotels, that you must pay at the Cadillac level, the highest level possible, the health care for all of your employees. And even if they have health, listen to this is how crazy it is. Even if they have health care through their spouse, in other words, they're already covered, you must give them the cash equivalency of what you would have given them. And so that policy started in Seattle, and that's spreading to other places as well.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. I know that labor issues, also just continue to, plague the industry and, quite frankly, the franchise industry. I mean, there's something that's being discussed in D.C. kind of at a federal level. It's called the PRO Act, I know that you and I have been talking a lot about that, and we've written on that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that so people understand what this PRO Act is and the damage that it can cause to the franchise industry and your industry in particular?
Well, it would destroy the U.S. economy. Let's be clear. It goes way, way, way beyond just hitting our industry. So the PRO Act, if you think about every bad organized labor idea in the last 30 years, it's all rolled up into one. And it starts with, this is the kicker. So you start here with the worst idea of all. There's 26, 27 states in America that are right to work states, which means I, as a free American, can go get a job and not be forced by law to join a union. That's in America, we call that freedom to work, right to work states. There's about 27 of those. The PRO Act eliminates all those immediately. There would be no more right to work states. So every single state, if your industry is organized, you would be required, you would be forced to be a union member if you want to work in that industry at all. The second thing that it does, and it's something actually that we're dealing with right now, it's this idea called joint employer. So the joint employer rule that the National Labor Relations Board is enacting right now, it's not happening legislatively right now. It takes a franchisor and a franchisee, and it requires them to jointly employ, or it defines the employees of the franchisee as jointly employed by the franchisor. So what does that mean in reality? Well, think about the way, I'm going to use Starbucks right now, which may not be the best example from a franchisor, but think about what's happening with unionization of Starbucks. If the union wants to come in and unionize a individual store, they have the right to do so. No one's suggesting they don't, but they have to get a vote of the employees in that store. And if that store says, okay, we want to be a union store, then that's a union shop. Understandable. Under joint employer, they don't have to go store by store by store. They can do an entire company at once. So think about every Starbucks in the United States becoming union in one fell swoop. Every Marriott hotel in America becoming a unionized shop in one fell swoop. Now, is that going to make the line shorter when you get your coffee? You're going to get a better product? You're going to get a lower price? Of course not. All of that is going to get progressively worse because of this ruling.
It seems very anti-worker, but pro-union is what we have here in the PRO Act.
Well, look, the President of the United States said, I will be the most pro-union president in history.
Right.
A lot of people didn't take him at his word. They thought that was just another one of his moments, I guess. No. If there's anything he's actually followed through on, it has been this. And it is destructive. Now, are there good unions? Of course there are good unions. I deal with a union that causes a lot, like, for example, right now in Los Angeles, because they're on strike, at 5:30 in the morning, they have bullhorns and drums, and they're beating them as loud as they can and yelling through the bullhorn as loud as they can to disrupt the guests. That is what's happening right now every morning in Los Angeles. Why are they doing that? Because they want to get they want to get their way. They did a sit-in, thousands of them, where they blocked traffic and shut down all the traffic in Los Angeles about 2 weeks ago. Now, you tell me, have you been to Los Angeles lately? You think they have any crime problems in Los Angeles? Do we really need our law enforcement out responding to nonsense like this and not taking care of people who have genuine emergencies? But that's how they look at the world. They say, I don't care how much destruction. I don't care whose lives I ruin. I want my way, and I selfishly want to get it. And you either give me what I want, or I will make your life miserable. That's not the way you should negotiate.
Yeah. And, Chip, if you remember, that is actually kind of where we started years ago, and where we really kind of merged some forces against the National Labor Relations Board on the whole joint employer thing. So they failed then. They've come back around and tried doing it again. But it really will kill, I think, to your point, the economy, the franchise industry for sure. This is a clear unionization play. Especially I think in the restaurant industry, because it's probably one of the least unionized industries, because to your point, they're right now franchisees, so you can't unionize as easily, right? So that is really, I think, in my opinion, a clear unionization play, so that they can bring those together and make it easier to add to their union roles and to the their political giving dollars that they give mostly to one side versus the other.
To put this in perspective, if they unionize McDonald's alone, just McDonald's, they more than double their annual revenue in one single company. How do you think that plays out politically?
Yeah, I mean, I read that McDonald's is 90% franchise. There's not a lot of corporate stores anyway.
Right.
And we've also worked with another organization that represents the franchisees, the Coalition of Franchisees Association. And so we've met with franchisees who own one store. You know, they just bought their first store, you know, whether it's Burger King or, you know, a dry cleaning franchise. And their hope is to grow their stores into 2 and then 4 and then, you know, 6 and grow that. But they didn't buy into it to be, you know, a general manager under this, so that they can report into the franchisor and allow their stores to be to be unionized. I mean, it's such a play for unionization and dues. That's the prize.
That's the prize. And again, they don't care about the destruction. Keep in mind, franchising is the single greatest vehicle ever for people in minority communities to build wealth. More minority business owners are successful in franchises than not franchises. And so if you destroy that model, who are you destroying? And see, that's the point. They don't care. Their view is just give me more union dues. Just give me more power and control, and whoever I hurt, whoever I destroy, it's irrelevant.
Right. I mean, people really have to understand this issue and speak up, and we do, I think, need to make sure that the minority community speaks out on this, because to your point, franchising really truly is the best way that you know, minority entrepreneurs get a part of that American dream.
Absolutely. We should defend that. That's the beauty of America. We should be defending these things, not sitting by and allowing them to be destroyed because of someone else's greed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chip, what else is keeping you up at night that our listeners should know about?
You know, look, one of the things that we do have to come to grips with in America, and it is I guess almost because we are still the greatest nation on earth, despite efforts of people to destroy that. The whole world wants to come here and work, and yet we have a problem where there just aren't enough people. You know that, Alfredo, because you talk to small business owners every day. We have this structural problem of about 10 million open jobs and about 5 million people who are identified as unemployed. And that gap of somewhere between 4 and 6 million persists month after month after month. There's got to be a better way to do this. There must be a way to secure. We know there's a way to secure the border, not tear it down, which is apparently happening right now. But you secure the border. There's a way to be able to allow people to come into the United States legally, and we must demand that. We must demand that everybody plays by the rules. But we also must recognize that the lifeblood of so many of these small businesses is employees. And right now there's an enormous gap where you just don't have them. In our industry, for example, we rely heavily on what we call visiting workers, right? Guest workers. These are people that come to the United States for a very brief period of time, probably a season, and then they go back home, and then they want to come back again. They're playing by the rules. There are all sorts of resorts across this country that many of us know and love that would not exist if you didn't have this. And yet the guest worker cap hasn't been raised in more than 3 decades. These are people that want to come here and do these jobs. It helps everyone. It helps every American. We should allow that to happen in a systematic way where we are making sure people are playing by the rules and helping small businesses.
Are there any good ideas out there, legislation pending or something that addresses this, Chip, that we should be aware of?
We do. We have a returning worker, what's called a returning worker exemption. What this means is, as I just alluded to a moment ago, someone comes to the U.S. as a guest worker, they do their job, and then as required, they go back home. So they're playing by the rules. They've done everything exactly right. If they want to come back next year and work at that same employer and do that same job, we don't think they should have to count against the cap. So the cap right now is about 65,000. Every president, Democrat and Republican, for the last 20 years has doubled that cap to 130,000. But that's statutorily as high as you can go. They can only double it. They can't go any higher. What we're saying is, look, if someone is willing to come here, do exactly what we ask them to do, play by the rules, and there is a demand for that job to be filled, let them come back and work again and not count against the cap. It seems like a pretty simple way and a way to reward good behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And is that legislation out there right now, Chip?
It is. We have legislation in the Senate. It is bipartisan. We have legislation that is attached to the appropriations process that is attempting to do that. And I just remind everybody, guest workers and immigration are two totally different issues. Immigration is someone who's legally coming here for the purpose of staying here permanently. They are immigrating to the United States. A guest worker is someone who says, look, I want to go to the United States. I want to fill a job that is needed. And by the way, you can't even have a guest worker unless you've attempted to fill it with somebody else. And then I go home. And by the way, is something I always love to leave with people. For the history of the United States, we've always had challenges internationally. Every country does. Did you know that the positive view of someone who's never come to America, outside of the U.S., they've never been to the U.S., the positive view of those people of the United States is about 25%. Somebody who's visited America, their positive view is over 70%. So when we bring people in who say, I want to work there for a short period and go back home, in a way, we're almost exporting the goodness of America, because they're going to go home and say, you know what? It's a really wonderful place. You should try to go there as well.
I like that, exporting the goodness of America. That is something we need to do more of. Well, Chip, how can people find AHLA and read more about the issues that are important to your members?
Well, if you just go to AHLA.com, pretty much everything is there. But we always ask people, if you're in any way tangentially connected to the hotel industry, to join what's known as Hotels Act. It's hotelsact.org. And that's just our grassroots effort. Doesn't cost you a penny, totally free. And it just signs you up and allows you to hear about the issues that are impacting our industry, which is beyond just hotels, it's general tourism, and be able to take action on those things that will help protect and promote our industry. So if you think the crazy nonsense that I articulated a moment ago that's happening in Los Angeles and throughout parts of the West Coast, if you think those are bad things that are going to hurt you, then join us. Help us stop nonsense like that. And it's free to do so at hotelsact.org.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Main Street Matters, America's Small Business Megaphone. Appreciate the time today. And for those of you listening, you can subscribe to the show at salemnetworkpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcast from.